All right. So, as you might have heard, this week we were rescued from the scourge of China, Chinese data collection. We've been rescued. TikTok is now safely in American hands, according to J.D. Vance.
All credit goes to the Secretary of the Treasury. Couldn't have got it done without Scott. Also couldn't have got it done without Sean Cooksey on my team, so thanks to them. The company will be valued around $14 billion. We actually think this is a good deal for investors, but ultimately the investors are going to make the determination about what they want to invest in.
It's terrible. The company's valued at about $40 billion. Somehow they twisted their arms to take a lowball number.
And what they think is a proper value. The most important thing is that it does protect Americans' data security and ensures TikTok is still accessible. And on this question of the algorithm, which we've heard this a lot, what this deal ensures is that the American entity and the American investors will actually control the algorithm. We don't want this used as a propaganda tool by any foreign government. We want to make sure that our people and our investors actually make these decisions based on what's good for their business as opposed to what's good for another government's propaganda arm. So that's what we've done with this deal. I think it's very good for the American people. And as the president said, young people love this. We actually want everybody to access this, whether they're MAGA or not. We just want it to be fair. We want it to be fair to everybody. And we think that's what's going to happen with this new arrangement.
Oh, yeah. No, young people are loving this deal. We'll get to that. Sam Husseini, effectively making TikTok a pro-genocide platform. Trump and Vance, genocidal maniacs trying to turn TikTok over to genocidal fanatic Larry Ellison of CIA spinoff Oracle, who pours money into the Israeli military and calls Israel our state. Here's Donald Trump talking about how awesome it is. Awesome that Oracle is leading this deal.
All credit goes to the Secretary of the Treasury. Couldn't have got it done without Scott. Also couldn't have got it done without Sean Cooksey.
To TikTok, I used it myself during the campaign, and it was very successful because you know how I did with the young voter. And Charlie helped me a lot too, and he said to me, "You should go on TikTok," and it actually had, because we got record votes with the young voter, as you know, for the election. So I was a little bit prejudiced in that way toward TikTok. It was very good and very meaningful, but we have American investors taking it over, running it, highly sophisticated, including...
If that's not a cabinet of crackpots, freaks, weirdos, and criminals, what is? What is? I wouldn't trust these guys to run a fruit stand legally, much less a government. Look at these guys. It's like the barbershop quartet from hell.
Larry Ellison. And Oracle, I guess, is going to play a very big role in terms of security, safety, and everything else. So we have very good controls. And literally, I would get a call from friends of mine who were fathers of young people.
Yeah, no, the company whose whole business is harvesting and mining data can really be trusted with your data security, with access to all of the personal information stored on TikTok. Yeah, man, I feel much better than I do with the Chinese
the official
zoning
deal
that
later
company.
this week at some.
All right, so here's everybody's favorite sugar baby since Heidi Fleiss explaining how the algorithm is going to be retrained.
Point. Under the terms of this deal, TikTok will be owned by a majority of American investors and controlled by a board of directors with extensive national security and cybersecurity credentials. In partnership with the U.S. government, Oracle will serve as TikTok's trusted security provider, and they will independently monitor the safety and data security of all U.S. user data on TikTok's platform. Americans' data will be stored securely in the United States without access from China. All U.S. user data will be stored on servers operated by Oracle in the United States, protected from surveillance or interference by foreign adversaries. And the algorithm, I know this is a question many of you have had, will be secured, retrained, and operated in the United States outside of ByteDance's control. And TikTok will remain globally interoperable, meaning TikTok users in the U.S. will be able to see videos posted by users in other countries and vice versa. While I don't have a number on the specific...
All right. Well, that's enough of that. So this is Americans taking over this Chinese company on behalf of Americans So why is Netanyahu whistling zippity doodah out his asshole?
New things, like drones, things like that. I won't get into that. But we have to fight with the weapons that apply to the battlefields in which we're engaged. And the most important ones are the social media. And the most important purchase that is going on right now is class. TikTok. TikTok, number one. And I hope it goes through because it can be consequential.
So what does he care? If TikTok is not being run on behalf of Israel, why would Netanyahu see the purchase of TikTok as beneficial to Israel? Why would he care one way or the other if a deal on TikTok goes through if this were not being done for Israel? But of course it is being done for Israel. This is WikiLeaks. Israeli-aligned billionaire sees TikTok in battle for U.S. narrative control. The White House has announced that the forced sale of TikTok will be finalized this week. The new ownership, led by Larry Ellison, the largest individual donor to the IDF, will take control of U.S. user data and the algorithm, which the White House says will be retrained. Ellison, who made his fortune developing Oracle, a database system he originally built for the CIA, already controls CBS, Paramount, MTV, Comedy Central, Showtime, Nickelodeon, as well as Channel 10 in Australia and Channel 5 in the UK. Ellison is also expected to finalize control over Warner Brothers Discovery, including CNN, HBO, and the Discovery Channel before the end of 2025. Even before the forced sale is finalized, censorship of TikTok content critical of Israel, including of the deal itself, has reached extreme levels as the platform moves to align with its prospective new owners. Fox, a Murdoch asset, is also seeking to join the Ellison consortium, a move that could enable cross-promotion between Fox and TikTok, further tightening the Israeli-aligned information bubble. Disapproval of what Israel is doing in Gaza has risen to 60% of the U.S. population, nearly double the approval rate of 32%. The U.S. still has over 3 years of Trump left. Israeli-aligned Jewish billionaires, don't tell Megyn Kelly they said that, control OpenAI, Google, Meta, Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, Palantir, CBS, HBO, and most of Condé Nast. Reddit, Vogue, The New Yorker, Wired, GQ, Vanity Fair, as well as numerous Hollywood studios, regional papers, and radio stations. Well, that's nothing to worry about. Here's the guy. Here's your new king of all media here, Larry Ellison, being asked about his ties to Israel.
What is your connection to Israel?
Well, the renewal of the Jewish state is something that I think touches all of us. For 2,000 years, we were a stateless people, and now we have a country of our own, defended by all the brave men and women of the IDF. So anything we can do to support them, who devote their lives for preserving the state of Israel, keeping the people safe, and allowing our state to continue sometimes in very, very difficult situations.
Did you visit Israel?
Hang on, did he just say our state? I thought TikTok was sold to Americans. I thought he was an American. Wow, man. They say that dual loyalty accusation is blood libel, but the guy describes Israel as his state. It's his state, right? So should he be considered as someone who's acting for America or someone who's acting for Israel, which he describes as our state? You got a mouse in your pocket? It ain't my state, buddy. Midwestern Marks here broke down who Larry Ellison is very well. Let's hear what Eddie here had to say about it.
Look at one of the men who's going to be taking over TikTok. This is Larry Ellison, the owner of Oracle Software Company. Ellison is the second richest man on earth, and he's part of a group called Friends of Israel Defense Forces that raises money for the Israeli military. Last year, Ellison gave them their largest donation in history, giving $16.6 million directly to the IDF. And recently, his company decided to build a data harvesting center, not in America where he's a citizen, but in Israel. The company's CEO, Safra Katz, on the other hand, is an Israeli citizen who will now have access to your personal data. So much for China harvesting our data, right? I guess the media was worried about the wrong foreign power. And just this year, Ellison was accused of suppressing or firing pro-Palestinian voices at his company, or even those who are just critical of the Israeli assault on Gaza. CEO Safra Katz even said, for employees, it's clear, if you're not from America or Israel, don't work here. This is a free country. Unless you criticize Israel, then no freedoms for you. During COVID, Larry Ellison invited Netanyahu to vacation on his private island while the rest of us were locked in our homes. And there are even some unconfirmed reports that he offered Netanyahu a seat on Oracle's board of directors. So Larry Ellison taking over TikTok is about as close as you can get to Netanyahu himself taking over TikTok. But on the bright side, it's an honor to know that these guys probably have a file on me somewhere after harvesting the data of pro-Palestine voices. They wouldn't be going after TikTok this hard if they weren't worried about the education that we're spreading on this app. They're actually scared of what we're doing here, guys. Let's go.
Okay, well, ending on a hopeful note there, which, hey, I think he's got a point. You know, if everyone overwhelmingly doesn't want to use the app, what happens? You know, like, we know these people will run things at a loss, but how far can they go with that before it hurts their bottom line? Now, if you want to get an idea of what the future looks like, we're already there in many ways. If you look up USS Liberty on TikTok now, you get facts about the Holocaust. That's what you get. That's your instant response. This is your favorite guy who I think he's primarily on TikTok, but not for much longer, maybe. TikTok's new free speech policy is restricting videos that discuss how Charlie Kirk turned on Netanyahu and Zionist influence. They banned 3 other videos of mine about this over the last 2 days. And he directs people to the Gray Zones reporting. Always a good choice. How did we get here? How did we get here? Remember how we were so scared about China? They told you had to worry about China. Never really rang true. If you wonder why we never built up a presence on TikTok, it's because we saw this coming around that time. That's around the time that it would have made sense for us to start to do it. It was so clear that there was more going on that they were talking about that they were actually going to end up fucking up TikTok. It was very obvious that they were very determined to make this happen. So here's Gen X girl. Did you know Zionists were behind the TikTok CCP narrative? 1, October to December 2023, TikTok was the top app for Israel Truth. 2, December 2023, Zionist tech investor Anthony Goldblum commissioned NCRI, an Israeli-funded and managed NGO, to produce a report claiming China's CCP controls TikTok. After the report was complete, Goldblum wrote an article in Time magazine making the case that TikTok should be banned because of the CCP. The evidence he cited was the bogus report he paid NCRI to produce. Congress produced a bill but failed to ban TikTok, and the scheme failed. March 2024, Israel lobby exerted its full pressure on Congress, and 30 days later, Congress banned TikTok. She includes the article here. Why TikTok needs to be sold or banned before the 2024 election. We have reason to believe China has its thumb on the scale. And right around the same time, December, here's Jonathan Greenblatt saying straight out, they need to take control of TikTok.
You must take this deadly seriously. pushing extremists off Wikipedia might not seem equal to the challenge of pushing Hezbollah north of the Litani River. Capturing TikTok might seem less meaningful than holding on to Mount Hermon. Libelous tweets certainly might seem less deadly than missiles from Yemen. But this is urgent because the next war will be decided based on how Israel and its allies perform online as much as offline.
Well, you know who was way out ahead on this? A reporter I'm developing more and more admiration for? James Lee. James Lee, this is back in January. He posted this. The TikTok ban has nothing to do with China and everything to do with Israel. Let's see a little bit of that.
In March of 2024, a bill was introduced in Congress, H.R. 7521, called the Protecting Americans from Foreign Adversary Controlled Applications Act, sponsored by Representative Mike Gallagher.
Foreign adversary control of what is becoming the dominant news platform for Americans under 30. This is a common sense measure to protect our national security. I urge my colleagues to support this critical bipartisan legislation.
The argument is one we've heard before. TikTok, owned by the Chinese company ByteDance, could pose a threat to U.S. national security by harvesting user data, and its algorithm could also be weaponized to, quote, brainwash Americans. Now, these concerns I do think are valid in a sense, but I think it's worth noting that companies like Facebook and Google engage in similar data collection practices, and then they would go on to sell this data to China. So China is getting the data anyway. But here's where things get really interesting. You start digging into Gallagher's largest campaign donors, and you uncover a story that goes far beyond data privacy or Chinese influence. Near the top of his donor list is AIPAC, the Israeli lobby. Here's a crazy statistic for you. Of the 500 plus members of Congress, only 33 members did not receive a donation from the Israeli lobby in the last campaign cycle. So essentially, when Israel wants something from America, they usually get it. Now, another contributor I want to draw your attention to, Palantir Technologies, which is a defense contractor co-founded by billionaire Peter Thiel. Palantir just happens to work very closely with the Israeli military, providing advanced surveillance and targeting software used extensively in their war on Gaza. And one of their consultants, a man named Jacob Hellberg, was responsible for writing the bill. Yeah, it's incredible. A defense contractor who profits off Israel's war were also the ones behind drafting a bill that would, in effect, stifle criticism of said war, which is a clear conflict of interest, no? At around the same time, the Jewish Federations of North America penned a letter to Congress urging lawmakers to ban TikTok due to anti-Semitism. Not one mention in their letter about China or data privacy.
TikTok runs all sorts of videos that portray the Israelis acting towards the Palestinians in barbaric ways. And when young people see these videos on TikTok, they obviously become remarkably sympathetic to the Palestinians, and they think badly, to put it mildly, of the Israelis. So the lobby would like to shut down TikTok.
All right. So credit to James Lee, man. He was out ahead of most. He put all of the pieces together. He's actually got a new video on this subject in which he takes a well-deserved victory lap. So good on him. Check him out if you don't already follow him. Clint Russell here. Trump basically told us it was too dangerous for TikTok to be foreign owned as it was influencing our young people. He then forced the sale. It went from being Chinese aligned to Israeli aligned, and somehow foreign influence is no longer a problem. Very cool. Makes perfect sense. You want to see what the future is going to look like here under this new regime. Take that down, Keaton. Matthew Feinberg here. Paramount Plus is releasing a 4-part dramatic series called Red Alert, based on true stories from October 7th, to be released on October 7th. This is a huge deal, especially as Paramount is the only Hollywood studio to speak out against the Film Workers for Palestine letter from industry professionals pledging to boycott Israeli film institutions. So that's coming from Paramount Plus. But on the same exact day, HBO acquires One Day in October, Israeli series based on October 7th Hamas attacks. One Day in October is an Israeli-American miniseries based on true stories from the Hamas terror attack. You getting the picture of the world you're about to be living in? It was produced jointly by Israeli TV provider, yes, American company Fox Entertainment, and production companies ZOA Films and Sparks Go. The series was created by Oded Davidoff and Daniel Finkelman. It is the first scripted series about the Hamas terror attack to be broadcast in the United States on HBO Max. So they're both going to drop on October 7th. You've got two Israeli propaganda miniseries, one on HBO, one on Paramount Plus, both of which by that time will probably be owned by Larry Ellison. Ellison is also expected to finalize control over Warner Brothers Discovery, including CNN, HBO, and the Discovery Channel before the end of 2025. And then you have his partner on the deal, Murdoch, the owner of Fox, was a producer on the series.
It's a big club, and you ain't in it.
That's right. You are not in it. So listen, man. I've seen some in the chat speculating on our politics, we're Marxists or not. I'm not going to speak for Kate, and I'll speak for myself. I'm for what works. I don't have a hard, ideological commitment in that regards, but I'll say this, man. If you're a thinking person, if you're an open-minded person, if you don't just have knee-jerk reactions to different words like Marxism or communism or socialism and so on, can you really argue that the premise of capitalism, that capitalism leads to choice and communism leads to consolidation and state control? Is that holding up for you? Is that argument holding up for you? Because it's looking more and more like capitalism is bringing us to the world that they told us communism would, a world of state control, lack of choice, where you've got all of these mediums serving a certain political narrative, and you really don't have any options, right? Look at this. You're going to have two different companies dropping competing pro-Israel narratives about October 7th, owned by the same person and produced by his co-investors in TikTok. Isn't this what they told us communism would look like in essence? That you'd have a very small, corrupt clique essentially forcing state propaganda on people. So you want to talk about the problems in communism or Marxism. I think there's plenty to talk about there. But you cannot say that a lot of what Marxists and communists said capitalism has not been borne out. Essentially, Lenin argued that in the end, what freedom you think you have, you're not going to have, because the capitalists are going to buy the courts and the politicians. And there goes your freedom of speech. There go your political rights. You don't think we ended up there? Now, that's not necessarily an argument for that vision or that system. That's a separate conversation. But you cannot argue that this system, this theoretical capitalist system, has not collapsed into many of the things that they warned you communism would be, and many of the things that Marxists told you capitalism would ultimately lead to. We are there. This system clearly doesn't work. And for anyone who's going to say, well, this isn't real capitalism, well, you make fun of people when there are failed communist states and they say that's not real communism. No, this is real capitalism, and it inevitably leads to consolidation. How could it not? Obviously, if all power is based on capital, those who consolidate capital are going to use the capital to buy political power. The more of that they do, the more capital they're going to accumulate. It's inevitable. It's only a question of how far out on the timeline you have to go before you wind up with an oligarchy. It's inevitable under a system like this.
Well, yeah, certainly. And yeah, I saw the trailer for the Red Alert movie. They advertise it's from the producers of Pulp Fiction and Kill Bill. Yeah, it's a very tasteful thing to put on a series based on a true violent event like that. And to put those out, while there's a genocide going on is in particularly poor taste, but they don't care. They don't care, right? Of course, it's all part of, just manufacturing consent for Israel's response, which is now killed in the hundreds of thousands. What did Lancet say, 680,000? It's hundreds of thousands. The average lifespan in Gaza is now 40, because even the people who survive, you're breathing dust, you're going to have cancer rates through the roof. And so, to have that kind of atrocity propaganda, to come out amidst this just shows you the lengths that they will go to enforce a certain narrative. It's not for YouTube not to say that atrocities were not committed on October 7th. Of course they were, but do the math. And where's the Gaza genocide movie? Where's that? The Gaza genocide documentaries can't even get distribution. You can't even get distribution
with an Academy Award.
A film wins an Oscar and it can't get distribution because it's about the pillaging of the West Bank by Israeli settlers. A documentary doesn't involve dramatization of events. Literally shows you what happens. That can't get distributions after winning an Academy Award. Not only can't it get distribution, the people who make the film get attacked. One of them's dead.
Right.
One of them's dead who worked on that film.
One of them's dead. One of them was imprisoned.
Two of them have been attacked. Yeah. And one of them killed. So, yeah. That just shows you the world you're looking at. It's the consolidation of media. This is where it inevitably leads, no doubt.
Please clap.